Hi, everyone. I'm Dicle Kortantamer. I'm a lecturer in project management at the University of Leeds. And today I want to talk to you about the role of leadership in creating value through projects. So projects have been increasingly playing a bigger role in creating value for organizations. And this was also recently acknowledged in PMI's Pulse of the Profession Report 2021. This report is very much in line with the emphasis the traditional project leadership literature puts on individuals, the behaviors of senior managers in creating positive effects in the creation of value. While this is plausible, what I argue today is that it is crucially incomplete. So that's going to be the focus of this presentation, how project leadership can contribute to a drift away from the ideals rather than towards them. And this talk is based on a case study I did in a traditional financial services institution between 2017 and 2019. I was tracing a project ethnographically. That means I was observing meetings, looking at the documentation, having conversations with people, very much embedded within the project. That was within the risk services function of this institution. And this project that I traced from its beginning till its end was very much crucial for the organization to reach its aspired future ideals. Specifically, it was focusing on two aims. The first was developing risk-related products and services through innovative big data technologies. And second, through establishing Agile as a new way of working. Both of these aims were crucial for competing with fintechs, the financial technology companies that have been disrupting competition in this industry, but also responding to the regulatory concerns that not having a consolidated risk view and working in silos were the primary reasons behind the global financial crisis of 2007 and 8. So what happened was, as I was observing this project, I observed a gradual drift away from ideals over the 2 years. And this occurred through an interplay between the efforts of the project team and the project leader, the manager, to reflect the ideals that I've just talked about in the project structures, but at the same time having to conform with the rules and the processes of other organizational units and professional norms. So to give you an example, for example, they adapted the Agile rituals of having sprints, that is 2 weekly deliverable cycles. But at the same time, very much in the front end of the project, they had to conform with the rule of the organization to commit to a specific deadline and a specific delivery, a very much move from collaborative evolving through towards uncertainty to actually a contractual engagement, very much the more traditional way they were used to. And this interplay kept on going, these conformative increased over time, and ultimately what we observed was a goal displacement. And this is a term that has been used by some of the seminal leadership and organizational theory scholars like Burns and Selznick. It refers to a departure from future aspired ideals towards more technical immediate goals. In this particular project, what that meant was a departure from the ideals I've been talking about towards delivering something the regulators would find acceptable within the time frame. And that resulted in an application that was slightly slicker, that was slightly faster, but developed in a very much traditional siloed way and really not groundbreaking in any way in terms of big data technologies. So why did that happen? I mean, the academic literature already tells us stuff about why goal displacement happens, but this case just extended on those insights. The first one was survival in a competitive environment. And if you look at Selznick's work, he does talk about organizations competing with each other and that possibly producing goal displacement. He also talks about rivalry within an organization. And this was the case in this particular project. This project was a new entity, and it was competing with more permanent functions that were well established and really did not want this change. So that was one of the reasons. And this organization was based on a market logic, which meant that everyone had to fight for their own revenues, which kind of intensified this competition. The second reason was that within this organization, there was an emphasis on both outputs and outcomes, and the division of labor was such that some senior managers were responsible for the delivery of outputs, and the others were responsible for outcomes. So while the academic literature has already talked about the difficulties of having multiple goals within an organization, this is the work of Burns, but also some of the project management literature says if project leaders focus on outputs rather than outcomes, that's problematic. What we see instead here is a condition in which we have outputs and outcomes competing with each other because different senior managers are accountable for them. And this competition resulted in the favor of outputs. And one of the reasons for that is the third point on the slide, which is the rigidity of the regulatory deadline. Basically, what's at stake with missing that deadline was major in terms of job losses, reputation losses for the organization. And that meant that, there was a power asymmetry and the outputs rather than the outcomes were preferred when they were competing. So if we come to implications, what does that mean for the theory or the practice of project leadership? Well, the key message is to pay attention to conflicting organizational values. And this has already been highlighted by Jennifer White and colleagues in a recent paper they wrote about socialized leadership. The insights of this case study build on and extend them, particularly in terms of sensitizing us to the potential negative effects of project leadership and the organizational conditions that actually contribute to producing these effects. So while the paper by Jennifer White and colleagues, for example, talks about compromise making, what we get here is a bit of a caution that compromise making might be tricky in certain situations. And perhaps we need to turn to some other ideas like integration, some of Marie Parker Follet's work, to kind of explore those alternative avenues in joining those different competing organizational values. And the other thing is obviously the rigid deadlines and power asymmetries that we need to be careful about that might actually contribute to a certain way in which these conflicts might be resolved. So I'm not sure how I'm doing with time, but that's pretty much my presentation. And I look forward to continuing the conversation here and offline with anyone who wants to do so.